And now, welcome to this session.
This comprehensive session explores advanced Postman techniques for web API development, covering everything from environment management and script automation to CI/CD integration and mock server creation, aimed at optimizing the entire API lifecycle. With 15 years in the software industry, our next speaker excels in web API development, Azure, and DevOps processes. He excels in designing and implementing software architectures tailored to client requirements. He is a senior principal software developer at Emerson Fisher Rosemount Systems. He'll share his expertise in API testing with Postman. Let's bring to the spotlight Mr. Vincent James Paz.
Okay. Hi everyone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, thank you. Thanks for joining this session. This is my second time presenting to this prestigious event. Thank you, PSIA, for giving me again this opportunity. So let's go straight ahead to the slides. Can you guys see my slides? Okay, thank you. So my topic is all about mastering API testing with the help of Postman. So before anything else, who among you uses Postman? So for this one, I created a survey just to give us an idea on who are the audience right now. So this is the poll. So looks like we're at we're we're on the with the right audience. Thank you. Okay, the results is coming in. So yeah, it's almost 80% of the attendees are using Postman. This is great. Thank you. So for now, let's stop the survey and let's go straight ahead. So you're using Postman, yes, but how? The question is how? How do you use it? How do you pass credentials to your request? How do you use URLs? Is it hard coded? How do you pass your token from login into your succeeding API request? Is it also copy and paste? What about your test data? Does it look like this? Something like an unrealistic data. All first name, last name, and email addresses are all the same. How do you handle multiple environments or systems? Is it one environment per collection? How about multiple projects? When you're dealing with multiple projects, how do you handle it? So who among you can relate into these screenshots that I just showed you? Can I get some reactions there? Okay. Most probably most of us, at least one slide is very can relate, right? So this is where my session is coming from. We're gonna master API testing with the help of Postman. It is more of streamlining the API development testing, dev testing. When I say dev testing, me as a developer, I use it a lot to test my API endpoints. And also, whenever we need to execute the test cases that the Postman has, we could execute it in multiple different environment easily if we're gonna do the proper use of Postman. So for this session, I created this REST API. Let me open this link for you to see what does we have here. What do we have here? Let me reshare my screen again. Sorry, because you might not gonna see the whole thing. Okay, so you guys can still see my screen. Okay, so this is the REST API that I created for this session. So we have two definitions, API definitions. We have the authentication, which has all the API related to authentications, and then for now it only has login. Yes, of course. But we have the main definitions as well, which has the CRUD operation for people and employment history. So okay, let's go back. And then when you first work with Postman, what do you do first? Do you start creating a request immediately? Yes, that's also okay, but the best thing to start with is to create first the environment. So this is the most optimal way, because what you define on the environment will be used in all your requests moving forward. So what is environment? So environment can be used to move from one environment to another. For example, if you're gonna work with your local, you're gonna test your test environment, prod environment, you can use this. You can leverage this feature of Postman to handle that easily. So usually it composes with variables like base URL, username, password, and usually um, unique and specific data for each environment as well are stored in this environment variables. So for example, the person ID or system ID. Next, to do this, let me show you my Postman. So for this part, let's create first an environment called local, and then let's gonna add username. Oh no, base URL, username, and then password. For the base URL, I'm currently running the people directory here. So its URL is this one. So for the username, it's admin. And when working with uh, sensitive data, we usually need to change the type of the variable. So for the password, we need to change it to secret. Okay, so let me create a new environment also for our prod. Let me rename this to production, and then change the URL with the right endpoint. Okay. So that's how we create environment whenever we work with API development. So let's go back to the slides. And then, yeah, these are some example of environments that we could create, local, production, and test. And then once you created your environment, what's next step you need to do? Usually we need to create the login request, because usually most of our API it requires a token which is generated from the login. So we usually create it as the second step when working with Postman. So from here, we have to use the variables we created from the environment. So we're for this one, no, let's just go straight to the Postman. So main, let's name, I just created a new collection called main, and then let's create a login. So basically I need to use the post method. So from here, you can then use the environment variables like the base URL and then login. So if we try to run this one, so it's currently returning a bad request. So what's missing is the payload. So from here, for username, we we have a username variable. Is it small u? Let me check. It should be capital. Oops. There you go. And then password. So there you go. We now have a login request that uses the variables username and password. But what's next? First thing I do when working with Postman, I usually immediately when I create a new request, I immediately add a test test just to validate if the status code is correct. So for this, I'll just need to create a new test using status should be 200 function that expect equals 200. So when you check this one, no, it's not status code. Let me try. Yeah, there you go. So now every time I run the login, I now have a first test that needs to pass. So what's next is to um, because the token needs to be stored or needs to be used in the succeeding API calls. Instead of copy and pasting, we can leverage this script of Postman to save the result, this one, the result of the access token into our environment variable. To do that, we just need to add a new line here, environment that set token. Then to get the value of the response, uh, we're going to use response pm.response.json access token. So yun, when you check the login, the local environment, you're gonna notice that we now have a token variable here. So whenever we're going to add a new request and use that specific variable, this access token, we just need to use the variable token to pass what was collected from this login request. So for example, if we're gonna get the what API can we test here? So let's try the people list. So from here, let me add a request called people and then base URL people. So let's try. So as you have noticed, it's currently returning an unauthorized because currently there's no bearer token yet. But if we're gonna use newly created token, just pass it using like this, and from there you're gonna get a response with status okay. Okay, everyone, is everybody still following? Okay, great, thanks. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So that's how you automate how you could store and reuse the token generated from login. Instead of copy and pasting, it's better to do it that way, right? So after you add this login, what comes next? What request do we need to create next? So the idea is to follow the CRUD operation. We need to first create. We need to first call the create API, and then read, and then update, and then at the end you can then delete the data that you just created from here. So by following this order, you can then you can then add multiple requests in a way that the sequence is good enough that it will not gonna fail, or it's like an API client journey, that kind of thing. Okay, so the main goal is that the API request should be in sequence. So you cannot, because you cannot use the API endpoint at the first sequence, right? So you need to first create, then read, and once you're getting a 200 status code on the read, you can then try to update the data, and then at the end delete. Okay, so next item, uh, test cases. So basically we have code snippets. Postman has code snippet for our post scripts. So for example, this one, if we go to this right side of the script, you're gonna notice this, oops, this code snippets. So for example, if let's go to the people list, if we want to add a status code check, you can just simply click the status code. If you want to add a response check, making sure that the response time is okay, and you can just simply click this code snippet here. So by just doing 2 clicks, you're gonna end up 2 additional test cases for your collection. So it's a good thing. Okay, next item. So these are the example code snippets that you can use. If you want to parse the response into a JSON, you can use the pm response.json function. And then if you want to check if the property exists, you can check the pm.expect to have property, then the name of the property. If you want to check if the expected value is correct, you can use the expect pm.expect equal to, just pass the property here, the object property, and then provide the expected value of that property. And then the response time, status code, and you can also, just like what I showed you earlier, you can get and set the environment variable using this code snippet. Next thing, Postbot. So basically, Postman has its own generative AI copilot of Postman. So it simplifies how we create tests from newbie, even if you're a tester with no coding experience. From newbie, you can with the help of Postbot, you can have a mid-level developer skills. That's the benefit of using Postbot. So it is context driven, meaning it will base on the API response. Depending on the API response, it can then generate different kind of test cases. You can instruct it to create specific tests, but he can also define test cases depending on the API responses, meaning the body of the API result. So let's go try this out. So for example, what I did here earlier, then let me delete it first, and then let's try to use postbot to generate the same code that I did earlier. So let's try to add test validating the status code and then save the token. So there you go. As easy as that. Looks like it didn't work. Let me try again and then save the token. Seems like it's not saving the token based on this result. Let me try again. Add test for status code and then save. Okay, so there you go. But still, it didn't add the status code validation. Yeah, but anyway, you'll know the way how generative AI works. But usually it would work, but most sometimes this does happen. So yeah, if this happens, then you just need to try it again. But this is the purpose of postbot, making it easier for us to create additional test cases. And maybe we can also try to add more tests. Add more tests. So there you go. So based on this prompt, it adds the validation of the content type, response time, the token should be present, though token should not be empty string, and then save the token to the environment variable. So as you noticed in the test results, you're gonna end up 6 passing results with just one prompt. Okay, are we still good? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Let's go. You can also try this prompt as well. Uh, should have first name, add more tests, and visualize. By the way, the Postman has this visualize functionality wherein you can create a table based on the result, or maybe chart or bar graph if your data is more of a diagnostic data. Those kind of examples. So let's go to the next slide. So if you remember this one, test data. So we usually have this kind of dummy data on our, especially on our test environment, even in our local dev. So, but the thing is, Postman has this way to make it more realistic, our data to be more realistic. To do this, Postman has this so-called dynamic variables. So it's a randomly generator for random generator for first name, for example, email address, company name, job title, even IP and bank accounts. If you want to check the list of whole list of dynamic variables, you can go to this link. This is also available on the Airmeet resource tab of the session. You can go check the link, and then from here you're gonna see this random generators. So we have booleans, colors, IP addresses, about IP, names, profession, phone numbers, addresses, even image, finance, all about finance, business. Yeah, we have a lot of generators here that we can use just to make sure that we're not uh, creating dummy datas. So we even have paragraph at the end of the article. So yeah, it would be better to use this kind of dynamic variables than just simply using hard-coded test dummy data for your API testing. So that's most of it for the how we could create a um, more maintainable collection of requests. So just to show you what I have, if we're gonna go to this workspace, so I basically have this request in place. So all of this has test, even this add person. So this add person has this parameters. So I use the random first name, random last name, random email address, and new date of birth. So basically this new date of birth is from the pre-request. This is something that you could utilize as well whenever you need to create a more specific or a variable that's not readily available from the dynamic variables. You can use this pre-request to create those kind of variables. Okay. Oh, let me check. It's unauthorized. So if this happens, I just need to click the login, and then this one will be automatically saved into my environment. So whenever I try to run any request again, then it would return the correct status code. So as you can see, if I query all the list of employees, I'm gonna get this more realistic data, even the date of birth. Okay, so next, oops. So exploring the features of Postman, basically. So we have this so-called collection runner. It's ideal for test automation. It summarizes your test results, and if you follow all the patterns or the practices that I just showed you earlier, it can be system agnostic, meaning one collection can rule them all, meaning one collection can be executed to test different environments. So for this one, let me try to run the collection using which, let's try the prod. So this is how you could leverage the collection runner to immediately run a system regression test in in any of your environment. So for this example, everything is passing, and only took you 2 seconds to run all the tests and all the APIs. So it's a good thing. Okay, and then when we try to run again with a different environment, let's say test. So there you go. So as you noticed, this one is now sending to the test environment URL. Everything is sending to the test environment. Okay. So mock server. This is basically a dummy server. It's a stand-in for integration, meaning any client or any system integrator who wants to use your API can use this mock server. And to set this up, you only need less than 5 minutes to do it. The responses simulates the actual server response, meaning whatever the responses from your API request should be the same result whenever they try to access the mock server. So the only requirements to make a mock server running is to have one example per request. So if you may have noticed here, for the login, we have two examples. For get all people, we have one example. Yeah, everything. And to create an example for a request, we just need to run. Let me remove this first and then try to run this up. Not found. Oh, wait, wait. Let me run the add person first. And there you go. So from here, you're gonna notice this save response. So you just need to save the response and change it to, let's say, success. Oops. And then to create a new mock server based on your collection. So from here, create a mock server and then just select the existing collection and select the main. And for this, let's say softcon mock server. Main for the environment, let's use the prod. And once you hit the create mock server button, the Postman will then generate this URL. So whenever you try to open this via endpoint, for example, let's try the people list. People. So there you go. With a less than 5 minute setup, you can now have a Mac server that you can use or you can give to your integrators, system integrators. So that's how easy creating a Mac server with Postman. Next thing, CI/CD integration. Postman has this Newman CLI. They call it Newman, but this is basically the earlier version of Postman CLI. So we usually use this to integrate with our CI/CD. The only requirements is that you need to create a API key from the Postman. So from here, there's a page here where you can generate a new, not sure where, but it should be somewhere in the settings. So when you have this API key, you can then create a CI/CD pipeline with the task that will download the collection and environment and then install these. These two are npm by the way, npm package. So Newman, you need to install it, and you also need to install the Newman reporter. Oh, better to have a laser. Newman reporter JUnit, and then from there you need to execute the Newman CLI with this following arguments. So it would look something like this. So it's fully integrated with Azure DevOps CI/CD. This Newman reporter JUnit full is a generator of it generates a JUnit report XML file. So it's a standard reporting for test results. So that's how you can integrate Postman testing with CI/CD with the help of Newman. And then monitoring. So we also have a so-called monitoring functionality of Postman. It's a way to easily check the health of your system, for example, and it can be scheduled It's like a scheduled collection runner. So you can schedule weekly, hourly, or daily. It also has an email notification, and you can also set it up in less than 5 minutes. So from the Postman, you're gonna notice this tab, monitors. So to create a new monitoring, just monitoring two. Just set the name, select the collection, and set the environment, which environment you'd like to monitor. For example, prod or test, UAT. Let's just go to the prod, and then the schedule here, and recipient. If you want to add multiple email for your recipient, you can also do it, and just hit the create monitoring. So when you run this collection, it's basically just trying to run the collection runner. I mean, it's the same thing as running the collection using this run collection functionality. So this also has the test results of all the API. And for example, when we go back to the first monitoring, we have some failing tests here, failing execution. So when we check it, you're gonna notice that it has a one failing test and the login. So basically, the login is expecting to be less than 200 ms, but apparently is this correct? 997 ms. So it's almost a second. So that's how monitoring works. This is the example of the run history. The same thing that I just showed you. And also these are the example of email notifications. This is the email when we this is the email that we receive when it first fail, and then when the monitoring keeps on failing, then it will pause the monitoring, and then we're gonna receive this email. And then once we fix all the failing tests, then we're gonna receive this email as well. Okay, there's a limitation with this monitoring feature of Postman. It is a cloud-based, meaning the environment you should be testing should be accessible via internet connection. So if you have an environment hosted in your internal network, we cannot use this. But the good thing is we at Emerson tried to create a PowerShell script with the help of Copilot to generate or to make it possible to run the collection runner internally with this same not the same notification, but with that has a notification mechanism as well. And with the help of task scheduler or pipeline, you can ultimately use this PowerShell script runner to do the monitoring stuff with your internal network hosted systems. So you can check the link here. It's also in the resources tab of the Airmeet. So when when we go to this link, this is what it looks like. So it has the introduction prerequisite. So if you may have noticed, where I'm also using the Newman and the Newman Reporter JUnit full and some parameters. This is the API key, the collection ID, the environment ID, the workspace ID, and some other reference variables here. So how to run, there are examples on how you can use it. Uh, so if you ever have an internal network hosted system, you can use this PowerShell script. Okay, next item is we have a Git repo wherein you can get all the ideal, let's just say this GitHub repo has the Postman ideal collection, this same collection that I have here, this this collection and the environments. And then it also has the bad example collections. If you remember the first few slides, the first part of my deck, I showed you the bad examples. It also has this collection. And then the source code of the people directory, you can also check it there. It's also available here. It's this folder. And also the README. So basically what the README has is that it explains the content, where the ideal is, where the bad example collection is, and then how to run the app, and what are the notable features of the Postman collection. For example, the Postman collection has the environments, the base URL, username, password. The login API has this username and password variables from the used from the environment. And then we have two post scripts that validates the status code and the token being saved into the environment, and all the requests are using the token that was generated from the login. And if you check the add person, let's just go through it. So yeah, this random variables here, and also the pre-script generated variable. Okay, okay, so that's it from my end. If you ever have a chance, still have a chance to visit our booth, please visit our booth. We're giving away 10,000 worth of food vouchers. So yeah, please support our team there by just joining the virtual game. So if you have any other questions, feel the floor is now open. Feel free to ask.
All right, thank you, Sir Vincent, for your presentation. So I'm seeing a lot of emoji, in appreciation for you. So thank you so much to our audiences for sharing your emojis. So we have a lot of questions to go over, sir. So let me start with the first one. This is from Danica Marie Medrano. So the question is, what is Postman's advantage compared to other API testing tool? How can we take advantage of AI concurrently in using this tool?
Well, basically based on my experience, because we've been using the Postman a lot ever since maybe 5 years, 7 years. So we stick using Postman because it does what it has to based on our needs. So if you're asking me about other tools, I'm not pretty familiar with it, because one after we stumbled upon this tool, we already fell in love with it. So that's why we're doing this presentation, because of all the features that it can provide.
All right, thank you, Sir Vincent. So the second question is from Kelvin Chan. So the question is, how can we effectively use dynamic or parameterized data in Postman to test different scenarios without duplicating requests?
I'm thinking if you're gonna use the dynamic variables, you're gonna end up having no duplicate requests. I think, did I? get the answer, the question correctly. Test different scenarios without duplicating issues. Or maybe can you elaborate further?
Let's check Sir's comments if Kelvin further elaborated the question. If not, is it okay with you to move on to another question?
Yes, please.
All right. So I think Kevin did not send any follow up or further elaboration to the question. So let's move on to the next question. So the next question is from Pat de Borja. The question is, what are some common challenges encountered during API testing, and how does Postman help address these issues?
Common challenges, most probably whenever we need to run multiple test scenarios in one request. What we usually do is just to simply add additional requests with the same endpoint, with the same payload, or with the same endpoint but different payload. We can use that pattern to solve or to create more bigger different test cases.
All right, sir. So moving on to our next question. This is from Maron Montano. So the question is, sorry, I don't think this is a question. I think it is. So let me read it over. So can I dump those PostScript files, validations and collections into a GitHub repo per se for version control, ideally in the same repo as my project?
Yeah, there is a way. We actually created a script for this one. The good thing about Postman is that it has an REST API that you can use to download or to update your existing Postman collections, environments, workspaces. You can do all those things using the REST API of Postman. By leveraging those REST API, you can then simply create a PowerShell script to download it and store it into your repo, Git repo, for example. And then if you want to push all the changes from repo into your Postman collection, you can then send a patch update or patch request into the Postman REST API. So yeah, it's possible, but you need to work with probably Copilot to build that kind of PowerShell script.
All right, there you go, Mara. So for our next question, this is from Diane May Ramos. So the question is, what are the future trends in API testing?
Future trend. I'm thinking most probably more of a generate um with the help of this generative AIs, we could improve creating more test cases or more better test cases or test case scenarios to make sure that our API is working as what we expect. So generative I would improve how we test our API testings.
All right, thank you, Sir Vincent. So for the next question, this is from an anonymous attendee. So the question is, how can Postman be integrated with CI/CD pipelines for automated API testing?
Yeah, the slides that I showed you, you can use the Newman CLI to do this. I've been using it for 4 years now, so it's still working as fine. So you can use it. Maybe I can share the link to the Newman, and the Newman JUnit reporter into your question later if I have time. Yeah, I can share it definitely.
All right, thank you, sir. So this is also a question from Diane. So the question is, what challenges might testers face when using Postman for API testing?
Probably because this is more of a it you need to have an experience working with JavaScript. So I think that's only the thing you're gonna have problem with. But with the help of Postbot, yeah, it would improve how you create these test cases.
All right, thank you, sir. So this is a question from Isa Pearl Santos. So the question is, how can we effectively automate API tests with Postman to improve reliability and reduce manual effort?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Just use the built-in tests of the post request script or post response script of Postman. You can add many many tests as you want there using code snippets or postbot, or if you're familiar with doing using JavaScript, then you can build your own test. The also another good thing with Postman is that you can run the collection runner anytime you want, whenever you want to, without going to the pipeline or CI/CD. If that would be a better option for you, you can run it immediately on the Postman IDE.
All right, thank you, Sir Vincent. So another question is from Christian Jerick James. So the question is, what risk and limitations should a new user of Postman be aware of before using it?
Oh, maybe it's based on my experience. The Postbot is currently trying to sometimes it will try to erase all your test cases in one of your requests whenever you try to add. That's kind of dangerous actually. Sometimes what I do is to copy first the post request script and then try to communicate with Postbot before, just to make sure that it will not gonna mess up my existing test cases. Yeah, you need to do it as well when you'll be working with Postbot, because it's pretty dangerous, especially uh, Postman doesn't have a, what you call this, the git compare history. So yeah, it's better to copy the post response script first before talking to the Postbot.
All right, thank you, Sir Vincent. So the next question is also from Isa Pearl Santos. So the question is, what factors should we consider when designing and implementing API tests to ensure long-term viability?
Consider when designing implementing tests. You just need to follow the journey of how your system integrator would use your API. So just like what I've said earlier, you can follow the basic CRUD operation. First, you need to test your create first, and then read, and then update, and then delete. That's the stepping stone, or maybe that's the first thing you might need to check.
All right, thank you, Sir Vincent. So the next question is from Maria Pasang. So the question is, how can Postman be used for testing edge cases and error handling in API responses?
As long as the handling, or as long as, hmm, it's always depending on the your request and the response, as long as you can manipulate or test these edge cases using different payloads, different query strings, different response, validating the different responses. It should work fine.
All right, sir. Thank you. So the next question is a question for beginners. So the
Mhm.
question is, what are some common errors beginners might encounter in Postman, and how can they be resolved?
Beginners for countering. Maybe you just need to be aware of the different parts of an API request. For example, the type of the payload, if it's a raw, if it's in form URL and code, or if it's a raw data. You just need to make sure that you're using the right payload, and also you need to make sure that you're using the right headers. For example, if your API is using a basic authentication and you're passing a bearer token, that will definitely will not gonna work. But the thing is, you need to discuss with the developers what are the right payloads, query strings, headers that you need to use whenever you try to use Postman to test your APIs.
All right, thank you, Sir Vincent. So another question is also for beginners or user friendly. So the question is, what features of Postman do you find most user friendly for beginners?
I use the collection runner a lot because whenever I create a new API, we we usually need to run the whole process. For example, especially when the API that I'm trying to build is at the end part of the whole process. So we utilize this collection runner a lot. So I guess that's the best tool. That's the most beneficial feature of Postman, and also the test, of course, the the post responses.
All right, thank you, sir. So the next question is also from Maron. So the question is, can it perform API comparison test based on per environment results? Does the library allow that at the very least?
Um, hmm, PM. If you want to test different environment results, that would not be the Postman is not the suitable tool for that, probably, because what's the best way to use Postman is per environment. But maybe there's a way, because you can have multiple requests per Postman, so maybe it would also gonna work.
All right, thank you, sir. So this question is from Kim John de Fiesta. So the question is Postman's built-in runner an effective tool for performance testing?
Postman has a built-in, what you call this, let me check again, because there's there's a concurrent run here. Not sure if it has a performance function testing functionality as well. So can I share my screen just a little bit? Oh, it's not possible anymore. Oh, can I?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you may share your screen.
Okay. So Postman has also this performance option for your testing. So if you want to try maybe 50 concurrent users, and then just select the collection. I was able to open this via run collection of run collection, and then from here I select the performance, and then you can just select the concurrent user that you want to test. For example, 50. And then from here, yeah, Postman has this built-in performance testing feature. So there you go.
All right, there you go, Kim John. So, our next question is from an anonymous attendee. So, can you export the test cases to add those tests in Node.js or any languages or framework to add it to the project?
Test cases to add those tests in Node.js. I think currently the post request scripts are only available in Postman. So I think the answer for here is no.
All right, thank you, sir. So, the next question is from Diane Gem Mendoza. So, the question is, can we do automated API testing using Postman and integrate it to pipelines like Azure?
Yep. The CI/CD that I presented is using Azure. I'm using Azure to do those things. So the task that I usually use is the command line task because most of it is using CLI. So yeah, you can integrate it with Azure.
All right, thank you, sir. I know we have a lot of questions, but I think we can only accommodate one last question. So the last question would be from Jed Alado. So the question is, are those the only dynamic variables or are there more different types of data?
You can build your own data using the pre-script, but for the dynamic variables, is what what's in the article that I showed you earlier are the only dynamic variables that Postman offers. But if you want to create a new dynamic variable, you can use the JavaScript pre-request to do it by yourselves. And also, by the way, you can also install different libraries. Let me check from the PostScript. There's a way to install a package using npm into the Postman. So if you're, for example, if you want to use the moment library, you can install it via Postman and then use it in your um, post request scripts.
All right. Thank you, Sir Vincent, for answering those questions. So I know you guys still have a lot of questions, so you may reach out to our speaker, Sir Vincent, via chat here on AirMeet. You may also see him in the lounge. So that's all the time that we have for this session. So if you enjoyed the session, please give your rating and share your feedback. You'll find the link in the chat box. So again, let's thank Sir Vincent by sharing your hearts, your cheers, your claps. Thank you so much. I see many hearts here. Thank you for showing your appreciation to Sir Vincent. So, thank you guys. You may now exit this session and click on the next. Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.